Good morning, Unitarian Universalists of San Mateo. My name is Shaun Collins, and, well, you just heard about me. So I'm your worship associate today. Today's quote is, "The ultimate measure of a person is not where they stand in moments of convenience and comfort, but where they stand at times of challenge and controversy." Welcome to the Unitarian Universalists of San Mateo. It's my pleasure, as always, to be back serving as your worship lead. I'm on the board of directors. I sing in the choir. I'm married to this wonderful woman over here, my wife, Karen. We'd also like to say hi to all you people online. Yay! Thanks for joining us. And as you heard earlier, today we're going to explore the life, the speeches, writings of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So, welcome. Jeremy. This is what I call a riff, since I'm a musician, on Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech, "I Have a Dream." I call it lucid dreams. Dream. Racism, fascism, imperialism, colonialism, ableism, fanaticism, egoism, feminism. One day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Dream. fascination, liberation, domination, nullification, abdication, deception, inspiration, integration. We cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. Dream. Planning, scheming, lying, cheating, loving, living, laughing, crying. We will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will all be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, great God Almighty, we are free at last. Dream. Dominance, intolerance, vengeance, indulgence, resistance, abundance, patience, reassurance. We will not be satisfied until justice rolls down the waters like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Dream. Greed, avarice, fear, violence, help, support, community, love. I say to you today, my friends, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. My question to you is, do you?
60 years ago, in 1966, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stood before a gathering of Unitarian Universalists at our annual General Assembly to give the Ware lecture that year. And he warned them, not gently, not abstractly, but urgently, there is nothing more tragic than sleeping through a revolution. To make his point, Dr. King used the story of Rip Van Winkle, who fell asleep and woke to a world transformed. He had not simply lost time, he'd missed a whole movement. When he fell asleep, King George III was the leader. And when he awoke in the colonies later, it was George Washington as President of the United States of America. He'd missed the moment when everything changed. He'd slept through the revolution. King went on in that lecture to remind us who we were when he said, the church has a great responsibility because the church is true to its nature. It stands as a moral guardian of the community and of society. It has always been the role of the church to broaden horizons, to challenge the status quo, and to question and break mores if necessary. King was speaking to the church. More specifically, he was speaking to our Unitarian Universalist congregations. He was speaking to a people of conscience. He was speaking to those who already believed themselves to be on the side of justice. He was speaking to us then, and he's speaking to us now. Over the years, there's been a tendency to dilute and soften the revolutionary aspects of Dr. King's work. But looking back, clearly it is easy to see that MLK's ministry can be described as a theology of resistance. And what's important to note is that he did not understand resistance as a moral failure. He did not understand resistance to moral failure as an option, to our moral failure. His resistance to that was not an option. For him, resistance was obedience to God. In letter from the Birmingham jail, King wrote these words, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." He did not write this as poetry. It was not meant to be a platitude on coffee mugs. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This was the heart of his theology of resistance. And this was not about the injustices that we as individuals perpetrate on each other every day as we do. This was about injustices perpetrated by the state, by the church, by capitalism, by the very systems that we have built to serve us that do not serve everybody in the eyes of justice. He believed that unjust laws were not merely unfortunate, but that they were illegitimate. Drawing on the work of St. Augustine, he insisted, an unjust law is no law at all. And therefore, when the law or policy violates human dignity, when it violates that, moral people are not called to comply or be complacent. They are called to resist. This is the heart of King's theology. Resistance, which reminds us that justice is not postponed for convenience, that obedience is not owed to systems that degrade human life, that order is not holy when it protects injustice. Now look, we all want peace, there's no doubt about that, but we must remain awake to what that means. We must remain awake. In that letter from Birmingham jail, he wrote, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. King believed that tension was not a failure of love, but that tension is often evidence of love at work. Tension is evidence of change. I'll take you back to Selma. We look back and we remember the events of Selma now as history, as a victorious event in the fight for human rights, but Selma was not tidy. It was not tidy at all. It was not calm. It was not universally approved. Marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge was illegal. Blocking traffic was disruptive. Refusing to disperse was condemned as reckless. And King said, freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. And in some cases, demanded by their allies, because it's not always safe for the oppressed to be the ones demanding. Justice in Selma did not come because the nation suddenly grew kinder. It came because the people did not give up and because they were willing to put their bodies in the way of unjust power. It came because they refused to remain still and silent. It came because they refused to wait one more day for change to happen. King warned, justice too long delayed is justice denied. Justice came because the people understood that waiting was not a neutral posture. They knew that they were prepared to do in that moment, what they were prepared to do was going to shape everything that came after. And that was true in Selma. And it is true right now. Today, we are again living through a moral crisis. At this moment, when we are wide awake, we witness when immigration enforcement tears families apart. When ICE raids neighborhoods under the cover of legality. When communities live in fear of masked officers with guns in our streets and at our doors. When the machinery of the state treats some lives as expendable. This is all under the guise of legal policy. But just like Dr. King, we answer to a higher authority. Our morality and our actions will not be dictated by unjust laws. When the people in Minneapolis and across our country rise up, protesting, organizing, demanding accountability, we are not creating disorder. We are responding to moral disorder. When law becomes a weapon against the vulnerable, resistance, my friends, becomes a moral necessity. This is why Minneapolis is right now being compared to Selma. Not because history repeats itself exactly, but because the same moral logic or disordered moral logic is at work there. Then Black citizens were told to wait. Now immigrants are told to disappear quietly. Then the state power enforced racial hierarchy. Now federal power enforces exclusion and fear. Then resistance was called unlawful, and now resistance is called terrorism. It's called insurrection. And King would say now what he said then: we have a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. So, we rise in resistance. That is our call. And we do it the way that King taught, through nonviolent means. But make absolutely no mistake. Nonviolence was never and is not passive. It has as much might, if not more, than any weapon that can be drawn. Nonviolence exposes injustice. Nonviolence dramatizes moral contradiction. It refuses to cooperate with evil. It wakes us up. It requires discipline. It requires courage. It requires a willingness to suffer ourselves without surrendering our souls. King believed that suffering chosen, never glorified, could awaken the conscience of a nation, not because suffering is holy, but because truth must be made visible. And this is why protests matter. And this is why disruption matters. And this is why silence is never neutral. King named the greatest threat to justice. It was not extremists. It was those who preferred comfort to courage. So the question before us is not whether injustice exists. The question is whether we will rise against it or not. Not merely in opinion, but in action. Will we name violence for what it is? Will we stand with communities living in fear? Will we refuse to confuse legality with morality? Will we accept the discomfort that comes with this truth? King believed that the church's task was not to soothe the status quo, but to disturb it in the name of love. He said, the church must be reminded that it is not the master or the servant of the state, but rather the conscience of the state. That calling did not expire with his life. We are here to live out that calling to be the conscience of this nation. Beloveds, this is not a season for spiritual sedation. This is a season for moral wakefulness. This is a time of resistance. From Selma to Minneapolis, from then to now, the call is the same. Rise up, speak out, disrupt injustice, refuse silence, love this world fiercely by resisting what is morally wrong. Because as King reminded us, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. But those of us who know our Unitarian Universalist history know that that quote did not originate with Dr. King, but rather a staunch abolitionist and a Unitarian minister, Theodore Parker, Reverend Theodore Parker, who spoke these words in a sermon in 1853. I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but a little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. And from what I see, I am sure that it bends toward justice. That is our heritage. And here's what I know. Little Reverend Laura Thompson. Don't want to compare myself to Dr. King or Theodore Parker. But what we know is that the arc does not bend on its own, right? That doesn't happen without us. We are the ones who bend it. It is our grief and our rage from our hearts that applies heat to the arc, making it pliable. And it is our actions of love that apply pressure to bend that arc. So here is what you can do. You can keep calling and messaging your elected leaders. Please keep doing that. If they know that you are in the fight with them, then, or if you know they're in the fight, I know a lot of our leaders are on our side. Call them and send them messages of love and support if you're not begging them to do something different, because they need that support right now. You can look deeply at your own life and find ways that you comply or are compliant with systems of oppression. Because friends, it's there for all of us who are living lives of privilege. Look at your investments. What do they support? That's a good place for a lot of us to start. Look at your own role in late-stage capitalism, which is characterized by extreme inequity, hyper-consumerism, globalization, corporate dominance, financial instability, and the co-modification of nearly everything, often highlighting absurd or unfair outcomes that end up looking like people having to crowdfund to pay for health care, people having to work gig jobs to make ends meet. The system is dysfunctional and unsustainable. Now, Dr. King was a strong critic of capitalism, viewing it as inherently exploitive and built for profits over people. He linked it to racism and militarism. He advocated for economic justice and a fairer wealth distribution. He leaned deeply towards democratic socialism to address systematic poverty, inequity, recognizing that racial equality could not be achieved within purely capitalistic frameworks that prioritized luxuries for the few over necessities for the many, calling capitalism out as having outlived its usefulness. We will not dismantle the plagues of social injustice that cause so much harm in this country and world until we dismantle capitalism as it has become, which begins with disrupting it. But how can you disrupt capitalism? That's a good question. But I just want to propose that that's something that we all need to start looking at. And this is a big topic to explore in other sermons on other days, but I want to prepare the ground for those seeds to be planted, that those will be things that we talk about. That's part of the long game here. But for today, for more solid, rooted, immediate actions, Jack and I have set up a resistance tool station right out here in the sunroom. There are love signs for you to buy. Those are great for your yards. They're great for protests. There are handmade signs from our sign library, which was over in the offices, but we moved it over here, so it's super accessible for all of you. There are more whistles. Y'all took the 72 whistles I had here last week, but I put more whistles there. Please take whistles. That's how we alert each other to things going on. There are rapid response cards there. Make sure you have one of those in your car, in your wallet, in your purse. The numbers that are printed on there are for you to call if you see ICE in your neighborhood, if you see ICE at the Home Depot, if you see ICE at a restaurant. We have to be vigilant. And here are places and events that you can take actions. These are just this week. This is a crazy busy week for all this with MLK Day and with everything that's going on. One thing you can do, you can raise your voices every Saturday at the corner of 31st and El Camino right by the Hillsdale Mall. Indivisible leads a ongoing protest rally there. Bring your signs, bring your whistles, bring your drums, bring your heart. It's anti-ICE, it's pro-LGBTQ, it's anti-war, it's no kings, it's pro-environment. It's all of those things. All of those things that matter to us. And it's the perfect place for you to practice showing up with others to raise your voice in a peaceful and safe environment. Because, friends, the day will come when we're called to raise our voices in less favorable conditions. And so I want you to get used to doing it in a place that feels peaceful, where you feel safe. What else can you do? You can ride the Caltrain Freedom Train, leaving San Mateo tomorrow morning at 10, headed up to San Francisco for a whole day of events honoring MLK. There's a march, there's a rally, there's music, there's workshops. You can participate Tuesday in a nationwide event. That's Tuesday, January 20th, 2 p.m., called Free America Walkout. Talk about disruption. Folks are being asked at 2 p.m. to walk out of work, walk out of school, walk out of stores, just shut it down. The event is being organized by the Women's March, and you can find out more about local gatherings that are happening in conjunction with that at womensmarch.com. The organizers proclaim that we will withhold our labor and our participation and our consent in this system that is harming so many. Next Thursday, January 23rd, there's another call at 2 p.m. local time where everyone who's a non-essential worker is being asked to leave work or school at this time. Sorry, that's next Friday. Next Friday. Everybody at 2 p.m. is called to leave work again to disrupt the system. This action is in solidarity with a massive ICE out of Minnesota event that is happening on Friday, next Friday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. There is a nationwide call for clergy to be in Minneapolis that day, and that is where I will be, carrying your hearts and your fire with me to defeat ICE on what looks like going to be the very icy streets of Minneapolis that day. The invasion of ICE into our cities and neighborhoods, into our local businesses, schools, and churches is abhorrent. Absolutely. We must end it. Last week at the Indivisible rally here in San Mateo, I saw many signs that said ICE out for good in reference to the murder of Renee Nicole Good by an ICE agent. And while we certainly do not want Renee's death to be forgotten or in vain, do not lose sight of the bigger picture of what this is. We want ICE out not just for good. We want ICE out for Santiago and Luna. We want ICE out for Maria and Jose. We want ICE out for Omar and Ahmed and Fatima and Asha, for Wei and Ji and Zihan, Kwang, Lin, and Mei. That's who we want ICE out for. And Natalia. We want ICE out for Natalia. We are rising and resisting to protect their lives and their families, to protect our democracy and our humanity. We still hold the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's teachings and ministries close to our hearts. But friends, let us dare to keep that work going forward. We will not leave these dreams in the past. In fact, we will not leave them as dreams at all. Because dreams are for those who are sleeping. And we will be awake.
Yes.
Thank you. I know we get caught up in this I have a dream stuff, but you know what? I'm done dreaming. The time is now. Action, awakeness. Building a beloved community that is safe for every single person. As we recommit ourselves to the calling of our own faith, to the calling of our own deepest truths, I invite you all to please join me in spirit and in action, and right now, to join me in prayer. Spirit of justice and truth, holy strength of love that resides in all, we come before you not to be comforted, but to be awakened. Wake us from the sleep of silence, from the drowsiness of not yet, from the quiet temptation to look away when injustice is carried out in our names. Stir us, O holy love, when power harms the vulnerable, when families live in fear, when force is mistaken for authority and law is confused with what is right. We remember those who stood at Selma, who placed their bodies on the bridge, who refused silence, who taught us that justice does not come gently, but must be demanded with courage and love. We hear that same call echoing now in our streets, in our cities, in places like Minneapolis, where cries for dignity rise once more and conscience asks if we are paying attention. Give us the kind of love that does not shrink in the face of conflict, the kind of love that disrupts injustice without surrendering our humanity, the kind of love that refuses our harm of one another. Strengthen us to resist what degrades life. Steady us when the work is costly. Soften our hearts without weakening our resolve. When we are tempted to choose order over justice, remind us that peace without dignity is no peace at all. When we are tempted to wait for a better moment, remind us that now is the moment that we have been given. Call us to rise, to speak, to show up, to stay awake. May we be a people who bend the arc not with words alone, but with our love, our actions, and our lives. Let the people say, Amen.
Amen.
What can you do next Friday to be in solidarity with those in Minneapolis? Things. Everything is unfolding quickly and moment by moment. I would ask that you use social media and your networks to let people know if you see or hear of things that are going on. I don't know. I think there's maybe a gathering in Belmont. Maybe, I'm not sure. But if you see things, share it with people. That's what I'm going to say. There's the Facebook group. Share things on there. Text out your friends when you hear things that are happening. Send them to me, and I can try and get them out on our official Facebook page as well. I do know that one thing that's happening in solidarity, a lot of faith leaders here, interfaith leaders that cannot go, will be observing a day of fasting and prayer. If that's something that speaks to you, that's one way that you can be in solidarity with those of us who will be on the streets of Minneapolis. As we go, we know that the work of justice is not only loud and public, it is also steady, daily, and faithful. May we nurture love in our hearts, in our minds, and in our prayers, and grow them into action. May we carry this moment with us, awake, attentive, and open to the call of resistance that is rooted in deep, unwavering, and abiding love within us. May it be so, and amen.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
Safe travels.